dry out. But sometimes there's a really good one.
Yep.
So then you swap it out for one you don't like.
Yep. And my parents recently moved. And it's like, like this box of pennies, pencils, and then just like, and we just like that, like if we were in school.
Yeah.
Sounds like I can like get rid of this.
No, of course not. And there's sentimental value. Yeah, and then you end up, when you're our age and moving, and you got all this stuff that's trash. Well, when we cleaned out the farmhouse, and rented a store, and then we're coming down here, Jeff and I took a trailer out there, and of course, Roxy wasn't along, so a lot of that stuff I wasn't.
She wasn't aware.
I would have put it in there in the first place. Well, we kind of had friends that come over and take her out for lunch. Make a good while.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. She just want to get rid of anything.
My grandma's like that. She still has my mom and aunt's like
Yeah.
like, what if you want it someday?
Yes, well,
It'll probably be rotted.
that was the deal, you know. Got all these dishes, collected dishes like man. They're all there. You got a whole set of stuff that her mother hand painted, and that her aunt hand painted, and she just then she bought things. Ready? Okay.
Good evening. How's this on the clarity of sound and volume? Okay, great, great. Well, thank you for taking time this evening away from the gnats outside. It is a gorgeous Iowa evening, but we're happy that you're here. Just a little bit of background before I introduce these guys. This is our third Oak Hill Fraud Seminar. And we wish we could say fraud isn't happening anymore, but it's probably happening more than it has in the last couple of years since the two other fraud seminars. We were here about a year ago, and it was a good room and lots of good questions. We have our techie expert. He was challenged last time by the people here, so challenge him again tonight. When we went over to Oak Hill, Maine, we had so many people in the room that we had to add chairs, and it was a very vibrant session as well, and we had to actually cut it off and say, we'll talk to you one-off, you know, about your situation. But we're going to just open this up. If you have some questions, we know that this is kind of a vulnerable subject for some of you. You may have experienced fraud. We want to be people that are encouraging you to be safe, and we also want you to kind of think twice when you go about some of your daily activities. Maybe once you've seen our presentation, you'll have a little bit more of awareness. But give yourself some grace. I mention this each time I do it. These people who are fraudsters are very slick, they're professional, they're mean, they're manipulative, and for some reason, and I find this so interesting, a lot of older adults, and you know, I'm not saying you all are old, but more mature adults, we sometimes find ourselves falling for things and trusting people when we don't think it's quite right, but we do it anyhow. So it's okay, and we're here to kind of help and talk about it and just make you aware. So I'm going to introduce these two folks. I'll start with Kevin. Kevin is a private banker, and he works in our downtown office. Kevin works with high net worth wealth people and is a kind of a direct line for them. A man of many tricks, and he's been with the bank 23 years, so very knowledgeable. Alan Schneider, he's been with the bank 18 years, and Alan is our IT guy. There isn't anything IT related that Alan can't solve for me, so I always appreciate He probably rolls his eyes when he gets a phone call from Cindy Schrock, but he's amazing, and please use his knowledge tonight to ask some questions. I always tell people at Oaknell East, I'm just up the hill. I manage our Rochester Avenue office where there is construction taking place. But it is a good office. I've been there over 22 years. And we are kind of nestled on the east side community here. And we are so happy to be a part of Oaknell East. We pledged that we really wanted to be involved with the residents here. We have a formal banking charter at Oaknell East, if you didn't know that. And we come on the 4th Tuesday of every month. Kevin and I are the Oaknell banking partners. If you're at the main campus of Oaknell, we go 1st and 3rd Tuesdays. And 1st Tuesday, we meet in the 3rd floor lounge. And then the 3rd Tuesday, we meet on Spring Street, right off the art gallery area, right there by the crosswalk. So we're plugged into Oaknell. MidWestOne heavily supports Oaknell. We have some people on the board of directors at Oaknell. We've done many loans. We've done many investments. It's a good partnership and has been for many, many years. So, without further ado, let's get rolling.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kevin Warner, and we're going to go through our agenda tonight. We would just ask if you've got questions to please raise your hand or let us know afterwards. We'd be happy to address those. So the next slide, Alan. We'll do definitions, that financial exploitation. We do tend to see that our older Americans are subject to this, but it can happen to anybody. And I've got some examples for you that we'll go through, but it's not necessarily someone you don't know that might take advantage of someone. It could be a loved one, it could be a neighbor, it could be a caregiver. The Iowa Bankers Association kind of sent out a newsletter for us and just reminded a lot of us about this information. If this happens to someone, we have seen that that person might lose trust in others. They might experience this anger or shame or guilt if they've been a victim of fraud. It really would have an impact, for example, on their lives and maybe their ability to live independently. So we do find this very important, and we do find that fraud is really happening in a lot of our footprint in a lot of our areas. The next slide, Alan, if you would please. Some statistics for you, but I would ask you to think about this one. The National Protective Services Organization says only 1 in 44 cases are actually reported. So 1 in 44 cases, and you can see about the numbers of victims and their losses and the increases from 2020. The next slide shows us what's actually happening in Iowa. And we're going to go through some things that we're seeing, but again, 1 in 44 cases is estimated being reported. The bank reserves the right to not actually approve or work through a transaction. So I want to give you an example before I turn it over to Cindy. But we get a client that came into one of our banks, one of our offices, and wanted to do a wire transfer. And that's a very common request for our clients. Our banker started asking questions, and the issue was that they wanted to do an investment. Again, it's very common to have a wire transfer for an investment. But as the banker started asking more questions, it became apparent that the person really wasn't giving us the true information or was maybe vague on why the investment and how you met the person and how things would happen. And so at that point, our banker actually said, I'm not able to help with this request. I need some more information. And I tell you that because that fiduciary responsibility, bankers across the country, across the state, do take that very seriously. And our banker explained, I have a fiduciary responsibility to protect your interest, to protect your money. And our client actually said, I understand that, I appreciate that, but I'm okay to take the risk. I'm okay with this investment. But as our banker continued to ask questions and said, I need some more verification, it came back that the person actually didn't know the investment group that they told us they knew. It really was a cryptocurrency transaction, and our bank saved this client a couple $100,000 in a wire. So we'll go through some things that we're seeing, but when you come into the branch office, when you have that relationship with your banker, there are questions that we're going to ask. There are patterns that we're trying to really look at to protect our clients and their interests. I wish I could tell you it's foolproof, But that example kind of shows us some of the fraudsters are training clients or training victims to say, don't trust the bank, don't trust that person, tell them this information. This is going to help get that transaction completed. And yet, as we really stopped and looked at the transaction, and really kudos to the banker that said, this doesn't make a lot of sense. This just doesn't add up. And that fiduciary responsibility to come back and say, please tell me more, please help me understand this. Then it came out that it really was a cryptocurrency scam that would help our customer. I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy, and she's going to kind of share with some things that we're seeing locally also.
Thanks, Kevin. That stat, 1 in 44 cases are reported. So those high dollars, multiply that by 44. I mean, it's just staggering. And you understand it. You feel, you know, you could feel shame, you know, it's embarrassing, you know, and we get that. But the key takeaway there is it's happening, they're good, and they're getting a lot of money. So what are we seeing in the local community? The last couple seminars we talked, and we're not going to talk in depth about the grandparent scam. When we were at the main office, about 95% of the people raised their hand when I asked if they ever got a call, and it was pretending to be a grandchild of theirs, and, oh, grandma, you know, I've been hurt, you need to send money, da-da-da-da-da. A lot of people fall for that one, not so much anymore. Unfortunately, the romance scams are still taking place. We've had to deny wires going to different countries, thinking, well, have you met this person? Well, no, we've just been talking on the internet. You know, those we're seeing, we're trying to thwart those. We have had some losses, not too bad. We're finding that there's some customers that, when we asked our phone center what's the #1 fraud call that they're getting, is they're letting someone, or they're hitting a link on their computer, and it's taking them, you know, somewhere where it shouldn't go. You know, maybe they're claiming to be an Apple, PayPal. We're seeing a lot of PayPal fraud. And the weird thing that, to connect the dots for me, is some of these people are going to Target or a big box store and buying gift cards, and then scratching up in the parking lot and reading to the fraudster, you know, the numbers, and then they're using that, you know, to buy products or whatever right away. But, you know, it's so interesting to me that, you know, why don't we stop and think about, like, what, does this make sense? Why would I buy $500 in gift cards and scratch off the numbers and, you know, give it to this person? Well, we've heard that they're mean, they're threatening. We had a grandparent that missed her grandchild's music concert because she was on the phone for 2 hours and she couldn't get away from them, and just, you sort of give in, they wear you down, you know, and it's just so interesting that we're listening to them and we're following what they're saying. They're coming in, and we've had some people that sheepishly walk into the bank and they're kind of lying to us, you know, because they've been told to tell them this, tell them that, don't talk to that person, you know. They're kind of making the bank employees out as, you know, you can't trust them. So it's frustrating. It's a hard job to try to keep your money safe, you safe, and we've also seen some purses get stolen at a sporting event. They're sitting in the stands and someone grabs their purse and then unfortunately takes their credit cards and their bank account, checkbook in there, and, you know, quickly brings up quite a bit of fraud that way. So those are some of the things we're seeing.
Thanks, Cindy. So that was a great overview of some of the ways that criminals can use these scams to make money, to take advantage of people. And I just want to make sure I mention too, these things happen to all ages, all over the place. You saw in Iowa, we're fairly lucky that we're toward the bottom in terms of the number of these events that are happening, but as Cindy and Kevin both said, they're getting more and more common. We're seeing more of it. Hopefully people are better able to spot these, and that's my goal tonight, is to tell you how to avoid some scams and email, over the phone, things like that. Just give you a few simple tips, because really what it comes down to, spotting these hasn't changed over the years. Some of the scams change, they evolve over time, but the way that they're trying to get access to people hasn't changed. So if we do the simple things, I think you can really make an impact and spread this information around so that we don't see as much of this in our area. So we'll start off with scams in email. Just a few things to go over here. Number one, and this is going to be fairly common across the board, know who you're communicating with. It's difficult in email to know exactly who you're talking to. It's easy for somebody to set up a new email address. It's not like speaking with someone face-to-face where you can be pretty sure you know who you're talking to. So just think about that when you get a new email, especially one that you weren't expecting. That's what we see quite often with fraud and within the bank as well. Our employees are targets for these types of scams as well. If you weren't expecting a message, that should be kind of a red flag to think about, well, maybe this isn't who I think it is. Beware of messages that convey a sense of urgency. Again, especially in email, this is common, but we see it in other forms as well. If they're trying to get you to act right now, as Cindy mentioned, if they want you to go out immediately and buy some gift cards, just take some time and think about that. Maybe try to verify, again, that who you're talking to is who you think you're talking to. And then within those emails, be especially careful about links or attachments. Those are two ways that the fraudsters, the scammers, can get access to your computer or to your financial information through your bank website or whatnot. So again, if you weren't expecting the message, links or attachments within those messages you should be a little careful about clicking on. And then the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If you're getting an email, again, out of the blue saying you won the lottery, or I think we're all pretty familiar with the Nigerian prince scam, that type of thing. If you're getting those types of messages where all of a sudden there's some financial windfall, it's probably a scam. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hand throughout the presentation here. If you have any questions, we'll also have a question and answer session at the end. Just real quickly, I wanted to help everybody get a better idea of how to spot when maybe there's we call them spoofed email addresses. So up here at the top, line A there is my actual email address at the bank. And then I gave a few other examples down below of ways that criminals might try to send an email that looks similar to mine, or send an email that you think is legitimate. So if you look at line B there, it's very common for people to set up email addresses with the free services, like Google or Microsoft has a number of different services. You might see AOL and Yahoo and some of the others out there still. Anybody can sign up for one of those accounts, and they can call it aschneider-midwestone@gmail.com. They can put my name, so at the top of the email address it will say my name, and then it will have this email address after it. So just be careful about that. If you get a message looking to be from someone, you might want to take a look at the address that it came from as well. Along with that, they can set up domains, which is what's after the @ symbol in each one of those, that look like they could potentially be legitimate as well. So line C there, MidWestOne Online Banking, that's not anything that's affiliated with MidWestOne Bank, but many people might think that it is because of the name there. So they can add something onto the end of it or make it look very similar to what you would expect from your banker or whoever they're purporting to be. And then the last two there, D and E, are similar to that in that they're different domains than we would use. They're not MidWestOne.com, and they try to make it look very similar. So line D there, can anybody tell how that's different than my email address up above on line A?
There's an L instead
Yep, L instead of an I, yep, and with E as well, same there's a 0 instead of an O in the 1 at the end of that. So those are common as well, to have something look very similar to an email address that you might recognize and use that to kind of get their foot in the door and get the scam started.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Is there any way to get rid of those? Because if you go in and want to, go to the end of it and want to get rid of it, you can't because the Gmail name isn't right, or there's no Gmail, or somehow they do it.
So you receive a message and you don't want to receive any messages from that email address in the future?
Yeah, I
Yep.
know that it's as a
Yep.
spam, but how do you get rid of it?
How do you trash it, she means?
Yeah, so you can delete the message just like you would a normal message. And in a lot of cases, if they're trying multiple times, you can also set up a junk email list or junk sender list. It's different depending on what provider you're using for your email service, but a lot of times you can right-click on the message, or up at the top of the message there are menu options to set this sender as a junk sender or something along those lines. And if you need specifics on that, we can leave our contact information. Yeah, yep, but that's junk mail or filtering out emails is a pretty key part of this as well. So hopefully your provider is eliminating a lot of those, but even with their systems to try to spot these and get rid of them before they even get to your mailbox, there are still quite a few to get through. Did I answer your question okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So if you were gonna go in and try to get rid of it, do you use your real name?
Oh, I see, okay.
They send it.
Gotcha. So you're talking about some messages have a link at the bottom to unsubscribe or something like that. And I typically don't recommend that you do that because some of the spam messages, that link can actually be a malicious link or something that could install software on your computer as well. So that's where I think step number 1 is just to delete the message if you get it. And then if you get it a second time, or if they continue to try to send them to you, then I would probably default to your junk mail list and let your email provider or your email client just filter those out. And that might be something that I can put together some instructions on that and send that out with a little bit more detail, if that would be helpful. Okay. All right. Karen?
Yeah, I'm wondering, okay, say I want to send you an email, so
Yep.
I use that top one.
Yep.
What if I mess up and I use one of the others? Where does that go?
Well,
Are
it
those real accounts somewhere?
probably not, hopefully not, because that means somebody's probably trying to act like they're me. But if you send it to, let's say you just have a typo in my email address, and it's not a valid address, somebody doesn't own that, you'll most likely get a message back saying that it was unable to deliver that message, and then you'll know that you have to resend it.
Not a bunch of accounts out there that look like this.
Yeah, there may be, but yeah, hopefully that's not the case. Well, thanks for those questions. Anybody else have any before I move on? All right. So now we'll get into telephone scams, and you'll notice that a lot of these bullet points here are the same because it's the same types of things that you need to be watching for, regardless of whether it's an email scam, telephone, in person, or whatnot. So the first thing, again, with telephone, know who you're communicating with. It's maybe a little bit easier over the phone because at least you've got that voice to try to identify who it is. If you recognize the voice, then most likely it is who they say they are. But as was mentioned earlier, in some cases you're getting calls, late at night, maybe saying they're from a grandson or a granddaughter or niece or nephew or something like that. And it's hard to make it out and be sure you know who you're talking to. So if they claim to be a trusted person or from a trusted company, if they're from MidWestOne, they say they're from MidWestOne and you weren't expecting that call, it's not out of line to hang up and try to call them back at a number that you know is a valid number that tell you to call them back at a certain number, you're really not verifying anything at that point. So if you do hang up, make sure you call a number that you have associated with that person or with that company before. Again, be cautious of unexpected messages or unexpected calls. If you get something out of the blue, that should be kind of a default, is that you question, why is this person calling me right now, or is this actually a legitimate call? Beware of messages that convey a sense of urgency. Again, they're trying to get you to act quickly before you have time to think about it, before you have time to talk to anyone else. So if that's the case, take your time, especially if they're asking you for payment information, card information, if they want you to go out and purchase some gift cards. There's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of time and kind of thinking that through before you take those actions. As Cindy mentions, if they're giving you a story or having you tell lies to your banker, to the clerk at the drugstore or something like that, that should be a red flag as well. You shouldn't have to make up a story or to justify your actions for something that's legitimate. So if you get into a conversation and they're asking you to do that type of thing, to come up with a lie or to come up with a story, again, that's a red flag. And once again, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Computer scams, we talked about these a little bit already. Don't give remote access to your computer. So there's a common scam where they'll call up and say that they need to get access to your computer for technical support purposes. They might want to set up a subscription service to eliminate ads from your computer or to take care of viruses or things like that. If you didn't initiate that call, if it's just coming to you out of the blue, I would just ignore that or hang up. Pop-up messages, that can be a way for them to get access to your computer as well. So you might see a message that pops up out of the blue saying you need to click on this for support purposes or to allow someone to fix a problem on your computer. Before you do that, I would make sure that you know that's a legitimate message or coming from a legitimate source. And then don't share your passwords with others. If you're giving your password away, especially to an online site or something like that, in most cases, that's all somebody needs to access your financial information, to access your email account or something else sensitive like that. So keep that information private. Don't give it out over the phone. Don't give it out over email, and you'll be a lot more secure there. Another thing, does everyone know, or do most of you know what two-factor authentication is? Do you have that set up for a lot of your accounts? That's one of the best things you can do to help make sure that if somebody gets your password, they don't have access to your account. What two-factor authentication is normally if I go to my bank website, for example, I'll enter in my username, I'll enter in my password, and in some cases that may be enough to give me access to the site. If your bank or the other site has it set up to allow for two-factor authentication, once you put that information in, you can also have it prompt you for a code or some other type of authentication method. And typically that's done through your mobile phone. They can send you a text message with that code, or you can get it over the phone as well. But by adding that extra layer in there, it makes it much more difficult for somebody to get access to your account.
I have a question.
Sure.
Often a pop-up message will be upgrade. It's time to upgrade your software. How do you know that's a legitimate request?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's difficult to know that for sure. A lot of times, if you've got somebody that you can go to assist with that, somebody from an actual computer support service or something like that, that would be one way to do it. And depending on what the message is, there are other ways to get around it too. So let's say you get a message saying you need to upgrade the version of Windows on your computer or something like that. There are other ways to complete that task than just clicking on the message. So you can go out to a known good site, maybe it's Microsoft's website or something like that, and look into upgrading there versus clicking on the message. So that would probably be the best information I can give you. Is it might be legitimate that you need to upgrade software or something like that, but I would do it through the software provider's website versus clicking on that pop-up message in those cases. Is that helpful?
Yes.
All right. So let's keep moving on here. So the last couple slides I wanted to go through were just how to protect yourself, protect your personal information, because that's another way that these scams can start is they get your personal information online or through some other source, and they then know how to contact you, whether it's by email or by phone. So with social media, a couple things I wanted to highlight. Be careful what you share. Social media can be public, so whatever you share can be available to people worldwide, depending on how you have the settings set on your account. So just be selective in what sort of information you put out there. Even things as simple as posting pictures when you're on vacation can sometimes let people know that nobody's home. So just think about those type of things as you're posting information online. For sure, don't share personal information. So email addresses, phone numbers, things like that. If you're sharing that online, that's, again, a method for people to be able to know how to contact you and run their scams through that channel. And finally, yep, go ahead.
Why do people keep using Facebook? Because, they get personal information. We went on vacation and all this stuff. People watch it. They say, well, that's okay, no problem. Fuck the heck out of me. I haven't used Facebook in years and years and years.
Yeah, and I don't have a Facebook account either, so I should just be upfront about that. But a lot of people,
You can't get rid of that data.
yeah.
Once you're in, you have to just not use it.
And there are ways to get rid of that data now. There are more and more data protection and privacy laws, so there are ways to do that. Once, if you want to eliminate your account and have them eliminate any data, you can do that. It's not necessarily an easy process, but there are ways to do it. But yeah, people use Facebook on a daily basis. They're very comfortable with it. It's easy to not think about some of the security ramifications of the information they're posting out there, and that's what these criminals take advantage of. Thank you. And finally, this is kind of a broken record at this point, but know who you're communicating with, because just like setting up an email account that looks like it's mine, somebody can set up a Facebook account that looks like it's mine too and contact you saying that they're reaching out on behalf of the bank. So if you get a new friend request or something like that, or something again that you weren't expecting, just think twice about responding, especially if they're asking for personal information about that, before you have a way to verify they are who they say they are. Talk a little bit about passwords too. I mentioned this before, but ways to protect your passwords. So we already mentioned don't share those passwords, keep them private. Another thing that you can do is use unique passwords, and I would say use a different password or a unique password for every site, but I know that's pretty difficult to do. There are so many different sites that you need to sign up for an account for. Some people may have 50, 100 or more passwords for those various sites. But I would say at a minimum, you want to use unique passwords that you don't use for any other sites, for your email and for your banking or other financial websites, because those can get breached. So let's say I sign up for a Facebook account. There have been situations in the past where somebody has stolen all of the account usernames and passwords from those providers. And then if you're using that same password for your email, for example, you use your Facebook password and your email password as it's the same password. If they get that Facebook password, they've also got access to your email account. And email is especially sensitive or critical there, because if they've got access to your email account, that's how a lot of your other passwords get reset as well. If anybody's ever forgotten their password and had to click on a link, click on a link on a website and then get a link sent to them to assign a new password. Well, if somebody has access to your email account, there are many accounts that they can get access to at that point. And same with the financial websites. So once they get access to that account, they can do transactions on your behalf and all sorts of things like that. And then the last one there, something to remember with passwords when setting new passwords. Longer passwords are stronger passwords. So if you use short passwords, the criminals have password dictionaries that they use, or common passwords that they try with a lot of accounts. So just the word password would be one that no one in this room would ever use, hopefully. But there are people that do. So
Password 1, 2, 3.
yeah. So expand those out. Even if you're not using combinations of letters and numbers, it's still better to have a longer password, because then the possible passwords are just greater and more difficult to guess. So when you set those, if you can set them, longer than whatever the minimum is, if it's 8 characters or 10 characters, it'll be a little more secure. And then protecting your financial information, just a few things to mention here. Receipts, bank statements, unused credit card offers, that type of thing. Those can be valuable to people. You may have heard of dumpster diving or going into the trash to get some of that old information. So when you're done with that, shred that. So when you throw it away, it can be reused by someone else. Store sensitive information like your checkbook, your financial records in a secure location so that people don't have access to that. Again, sometimes what we use to verify customers' identity, we might ask for transactions and things like that so people can get access to that information. They can potentially get access to your accounts as well. So make sure you keep that information secure. Again, we've mentioned this before, don't give out your personal information over the phone or email. Ensure online sites are legitimate before providing account or credit card information. So that's, again, if you get a pop-up message or you have a link within an email and you click on it, it may look exactly like the site that you think it's taking you to. It may look like eBay or PayPal or any of those sites. But if you look up at that URL or that address bar at the top of your browser, it could be something completely different. So just think about that and kind of take a moment to look into the legitimacy of a site or URL before you click on that link and entering your information. And then something as simple as checking your statements and credit report on a regular basis can be very helpful too, because you can see maybe some small transactions. And a lot of times that's the way these scams will start out. They'll make a number of smaller transactions to an account to try to see if anybody's watching. And if you can catch it early, you can eliminate some or minimize some larger losses down the road. So check those records as well on a regular basis. So that was a lot. Do we have another question?
Yeah, I had a question about the checkbook. So I have read that if somebody gets a hold of a check which has your routing number and your account number, they can drain your account electronically. Is that true?
I suppose theoretically it's possible. With a lot of the transactions, electronic transactions, there's more authorization than just the routing number and the account number needed. But that's another reason to monitor your statements and things like that on a regular basis, because people do try to, even if they don't use just that information, they try to piece it together with other pieces of information to open an account in your name or something like that. So that's just a good reason to not give out that information to anybody who doesn't need it.
So what is the type of information that the bank uses to verify?
Well, it depends on the kind of transaction. So if somebody had, if they just came in and wanted to fill out a withdrawal ticket in your name, for example, you can have that, the routing number information, we would have it on our tickets as well, but then you can provide the account number, you can provide the name, but we're going to do some validation. We'll probably ask for an ID.
Talking about electronically. With a routing number and the check or the account number, can they do things electronically without ever coming into the bank, without ever actually talking to it?
Yeah, again, it is possible, but hopefully that would be caught at some point. So, and maybe, I don't know if you see these specific examples within the branch, but maybe an example would be you try to go online to some type of site that will allow for an electronic check payment and use somebody else's information. A lot of times, again, there's additional information that's needed to validate that they are who they say they are. But let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say that transaction goes through the way that it should, or the way that you would expect it to if it was your transaction. There are dispute processes to say, again, if you're checking your statement, I didn't make this transaction, or I didn't make this electronic payment.
Who is responsible then?
Who's responsible if you dispute it?
Yeah.
If you didn't authorize it, the bank loses the money.
I'm sorry.
If you didn't authorize it, you come in, Lois, and say, I didn't authorize this, then you sign an affidavit saying,
most cases, it's not a big deal. If you're logging in on a personal computer, it's most likely not going to be a problem. You know, if it's something within, you know, something that only you are using. Number one, that website will time out after a certain period of time if you're not looking at flight information and things like that for, let's say, 15 minutes, and it's different from site to site, but it will log you out so that your account is no longer logged on. Now, if that were to happen in a public area, like let's say you're in a library or something like that using a computer, enter your login information, and then walk away, and somebody else walks up there, they will potentially have access to your account. So that's a good reason to, you know, if you've got your device in a public area and you get up and walk away, you probably want to keep an eye on that. But yeah, stuff like that can happen. But if it's a personal computer, it's fairly secure in that it's in your home. You probably don't have much to worry about. Thank you. All right, so just in summary, and again, we'll have time for questions here at the end as well, but just wanted to summarize a few simple things, again, that you can do to try to protect yourself. If you get approached through any of these methods, email, telephone, some of these are even in person, stop and think, verify who it is that you're talking to, verify their story or the information that they're giving you, and that can go a long way towards avoiding any of these situations. Ask questions as well. So if they're giving you a story, don't be afraid to ask for verification. Don't be afraid to ask for information so that you know they are who they say they are. And even ask questions of others. Tell them, you know, I can't do this right now. I need to check on something. Give me your contact information. I can call you back if you think it might be legitimate. And then check with others. You know, check with trusted people within your life, loved ones or others who can help verify who this person was that you're talking to. And don't be embarrassed to ask for help. We mentioned on a number of occasions tonight, this stuff is happening all over the place. It's more and more common. It will happen to anybody regardless of age, regardless of location, things like that. So if something like this happens to you, don't be embarrassed to tell people about it. Don't be one of those 43 out of 44 people who don't report it. Let somebody know what happened and just try to make the best of the situation at that point. So with that, we just had a few things to cover in terms of what to do if you or someone you know is a victim. I think Kevin, we're going to cover that.
So we're hoping this never happens to anybody, but if it does happen to a friend or a loved one or yourself, one of the things we do ask is that you take action, right? Report it. Talk to somebody you trust. Talk to the bank. Talk to somebody and say, this is what happened. We've had over the course of the time, folks keep you on the phone. They keep you on the phone. One of the things we advise is hang up. You get them off the phone, get your mind reset on, hey, I want to talk to somebody I trust about. Why do they need a gift card for me to pay this bill? Why would the IRS need me to pay by gift card or something like that? It doesn't make sense, and I just want to reset and start over. But we do say stop that communication. Hang up on that person, talk to somebody you know. Save the records or gather the details. That's one of the items I typically cover. If an event would happen and you call the bank and say, hey, I think I'm a victim of fraud, we're going to have some questions, and we're going to kind of ask the customer what happened, kind of tell me what happened, and what took place. I got a phone call, I had a pop-up on my computer, I got a text. We're trying to gauge what steps we need to take to help protect your assets. But if it's something on your computer, we're going to shut your online banking off. You're going to have to get your computer cleaned professionally because we don't know what might be on there. Is there some type of malware or something like that? I gave out my debit card information. Well, we're going to shut your debit card off and then get you a new debit card. My checking account number. I gave my routing number and my account number. Again, that's a potential for fraud. We have to be careful about that. We've had customers that said, I thought I was talking to a medical clinic and I gave out my social security number and my birth date and things like that. Well, that's a little different than that might be identity theft. And so there's just different cases and courses of action that we want to take, but we want to take it right away. Because it's amazing how quickly these folks will act. Like We said with these debit cards or check, we're going to try to send a transaction through that account. We're going to try to garner that money before you can take any action on that. We do want you to protect your personal information. Do review your bank statements. Do come in and talk to the office if you have a question. Hey, what's this charge on my account? I don't understand this. What do I need to do to protect myself? And those questions are great questions to make sure we understand what's going on with the account. Could be a credit card statement, could be a bank statement, just those types of things to really be aware of what's going on. But then report it. Ask the questions, and sometimes it is a lot of work. You know, I don't want to change my checking account number. I have all the automatics, but it's that fraudulent activity that we have to fiduciary responsibility protect our customers. Yes, sir.
Back to pop-ups, I just learned about them lately. I haven't gotten hit by it, so recently I did. I asked IT down here, and they told me a keystroke that freezes your computer right there, so you can keep on going. And I don't know how to explain what it does, but it gets you going again. You press all 4 keys simultaneously, and it turns the pop-up. Yeah. So
Yes,
talk
sir.
to IT about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys know that.
Yeah.
Steve?
I did ask our service center person what was the #1 fraudulent activity that she's received, and she said it's the pop-up. It's the person that clicks on that pop-up and then allows access to the computer. We got to shut the online banking off. We got to have that person get that computer clean because we just don't know what's on there. And we won't actually reopen the online banking account until we get a receipt that you had it professionally clean. We're that concerned about that. That's a big issue for us. We sure appreciate you guys coming tonight. We're happy to stay around and answer more questions if you have them. We know we're competing with the beautiful weather outside, so we sure appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I wish to share something. Midwest is really on the ball. Cindy, as you know, I have purchased CDs 3 different times. And the last time I did, I get an email from MidWestOne asking if I've been pressured to do this, if I knew the person, do I have another account? And I really do think it was authentic. It didn't ask any personal questions. Just wanted to know if I was pressured, if options were explained to me. So that was good.
In summary, I'll just say we are Midwest nice. We're in Iowa. We want to trust people, but we also need to think of our own personal safety. I think it's good that we can ask each other, and we can also, there's a lot of good questions tonight. You guys had some real sincere questions. I would say multiple times we have, during the week, customers bring in the letters that they get. You know, is this a scam? Yes, it's a scam. Or, you know, ask someone, you know, if they want you to act fast, and so, you know, those pop-ups are annoying. They, you know, you don't want to see it again, and so it's easy just to click on it. Or so we're all human and we make mistakes, but it's kind of how we deal with those mistakes and how we go forward is the important piece. And like I said, give yourself, you know, some grace. It could happen to you. I have doctors, I have lawyers, I have educators. I have very, very wealthy people. I have, you know, it's not just someone that is, you know, off the street, so to speak, that, you know, is not thinking. It happens to everybody, you know, and we just want to try to get a glimpse of helping you in ways that we can. So we are here at Oak Knoll, the 4th Tuesday of the month. You probably have some other questions. You know, we do the little banking deal, but we're always open for talking. Up the hill at the Rochester office, you're welcome to visit me. I have a great team up there. You can email Alan. He's the computer. Don't ask me about some of the computer stuff. Alan's our specialist, and he would be happy to talk maybe on some more one-offs that maybe the whole group doesn't have to listen to. But very good questions asked, and thank you so much for letting us come. So, have a great evening. Thanks, Lindsay, too, for the stuff. She's amazing.